Okay, moving right along, Ryan Newman, he drives the number 39 Tornadoes Chevrolet, and with Stewart Haas Racing. He's 8th in points. And Ryan, before we go into the race weekend, I know that the Ryan Newman Foundation has been very, very active of late with the tornadoes that obviously devastated the southeastern part of this country. The Greater Birmingham, Alabama Humane Society, you're going to be working with those folks to help in this cause. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, we've got a great partnership with IMS, the pet food company, and doing what we can to try to help out with the devastation, and ultimately, try to help the animals that. Just as we saw in Hurricane Katrina's efforts, the animals are thought of secondly, typically, and people are trying to take care of themselves so they can take care of the animals. So we're trying to do what we can to help with the efforts with the IMS's support and our just local support to drop off food and things that animals need, in water and different things like that otherwise they may not get. So. The Greater Alabama Humane Society, as well as some other shelters down there, are doing their part to help out, and I think my wife actually is planning on a trip down there to help unload the trucks and get the food to the proper drop site so that the animals can get caught up on their feed and everything else. So just doing what we can from our standpoint, from NASCAR standpoint, our foundation to work together with their group efforts to help to control some of the devastation.
That's certainly a great cause because, when you think about it, all the devastation out there, not only affecting people, but it affects the pets. And sometimes that gets overlooked. So thank you so much for doing that with the Ryan Newman Foundation. Okay, Ryan, you come in here 8th in points. I know you're hungry for a victory this season. Talk about racing here at Darlington Raceway.
Well, I've always said this is one of my favorite racetracks. I really look forward to it. Just racing the racetrack and racing the competition, but the way you drive this racetrack, it's rewarding in several different aspects. But it can reach out and bite you in any second at the same time. So I look forward to it. We got the opportunity to do the Goodyear tire test when we came down here. I think that gives us a little bit of a leg up. But in saying that, we got to go out there and do our job and keep the right side clean and have a fast race car. So. Just look forward to the opportunity this weekend with the Tornado Chevrolet to get that first victory for our team this year.
Questions for Ryan Newman? If you have one, raise your hand. We'll start with Lee, and then we'll move forward. Go ahead.
Lee Spencer, Fox Sports. I talked to your crew chief, Mr. Gibson, this week, and what left him more upset about Richmond was just the fact of the toll that it takes on the race team itself. And can you talk about, when tempers flare, sometimes people don't think of the big picture implications, points, crew guys, everything else that comes into play?
Well, yeah, obviously, when tempers flare, your mindset kind of goes out the window. But, I try to maintain a good mindset in the situation that I was in. And, ultimately, the way it all worked out, and it cost us a lot for what we didn't do, and that's the toughest part of that whole situation there at Richmond. So, just getting caught up in a racing situation that in turn turns into something else because of somebody's temper is not acceptable in my eyes. So, we'll move on, and it was sad because of the way it affects our team, and I'm not worried about anybody else's team, but it affects our team because of because somebody losing their temper, and that's the way it is taken out on a team is different than the way it should be taken out on a driver, and that's something that will get addressed.
Okay, we'll go Bob Pockris and then David Newton.
Bob Pockris from SceneDaily.com. I mean, do you feel like that issue is over, or do you feel like, or will you race Juan any differently from here on out?
I don't think once you have an issue, it's ever over in what we do. Even when you think you're over it with somebody else, it can reflare really quick. And I'm not sure if that was something that was a part of what happened to Richmond, but either way, I'm still not happy about it. Let's put it that way.
David?
Yeah, Ryan, it seems like you and Juan have kind of had issues since his very first race back at Homestead. by his scorecard, you had wrecked him 3 times, and he'd never wrecked you until he retaliated. Kind of what started...
You read his scorecard?
No, he told us that.
Oh, okay.
So, what is your impression of what happened to kind of start whatever is going on between you guys, and what is really going on between you guys?
I'm not real sure, honestly. I know he's a really, hard racer. He's very physical, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as you have amount of respect. And I think the respect went out the window Saturday night at Richmond, and I'm not real sure why, but I know for a fact that his spotter admitted fault of not even calling me out there on the outside of him off of turn 2, and why he would go and crash me afterwards is disrespectful. So, scorecard or not, what happened clear back in his first race at Homestead was merely an accident, and I was called to the NASCAR trailer after that to be reassured to them that it was an accident, because he physically cut across my nose going into turn 1 on a restart, in which I crashed myself before that, so I don't understand where the scorecard actually is. It's not like I turned him around. I spun myself off of turn 2 at Homestead in whatever year it was. So I don't know who's number one, who's keeping score, number 2, how they're keeping score, and if it really matters.
Next question, all the way in the back. Rusty? Get Rusty a mic, please.
Rusty Ball in NASCAR Media Group. I'm going to spare you from those questions just for a second. If I could ask you to look ahead for me, one tough oval to another. Dover's been described as a self-cleaning roller coaster ride. Just you could kind of give your thoughts on Dover.
It's another one of my favorite racetracks. This little swing we have here, Richmond, Darlington, Dover, Charlotte, it's been kind of similar in the last few years, but it's a string of races that I really enjoy. Dover's a very demanding racetrack. The way the altitude or the elevation changes, I should say, going into the corners and coming off, adds another parameter of it that makes it more exciting from our standpoints as drivers. It's a challenge, and I think challenge is just like here at Darlington. If you don't like a challenge, and you don't like Darlington or Dover, so I like them both. I look forward to racing there. It's fast, it's demanding. It's just I like the banked racetracks, and it's one of those.
Let's go with Jenna. Then we'll go over here to Brian, and then Claire.
Jenna Fryer, AP. I had a non-Montoya question, but I want to ask one, but one popped up. What happens next going forward? Are you able to race around him?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not. Haven't got to that part yet.
Jeff Gordon's crashed last week at Richmond, and he hit a part of the wall that didn't have a safer barrier. He says he thinks that'll probably be addressed. At this stage, someone is as active in UN's safety. Is it acceptable that there was a part of the track that he hit that didn't have a safer barrier?
I don't know if the word acceptable is right. I mean, it's part of the things that we learn, in hindsight. And whether it's Pocono, whether it's Richmond, whether it's another racetrack, I guess it was probably going back to Vegas when he first hit the wall on the inside on the backstretch that kind of made him magnetic to backstretch inside walls. But in saying that, there's no part of it, I guess, that you could say is acceptable. But if we don't take the time to learn from the things, or if our mindset is behind to the point that we should have, and we're not, we can blame ourselves because we didn't do those things to make it safer, then then it's our fault and it's not acceptable. But in the end, nobody got hurt. I assume he's not hurt. I think he was sore, but he's not hurt. And we can learn from those things and go on. And that's a big part of what NASCAR has done to get us in a position where we can keep making those steps in the right direction. So ultimately, it's never an issue. That's the second part of it is, and it's kind of a catch-22. We never want to make it so safe that a guy can go out here and drive wide open into a corner, bounce off the wall, and try to hit somebody and take him out. It's just there's a part of it where it still has to be partially dangerous.
Let's go over here to Brian. Go ahead.
Brian Nelson, Motor Racing Network. The degree to which you're racing the track here versus racing your opponents, how aggressive can you afford to be? How bold can you afford to be here at Darlington? And is there an element of patience that you need to be successful?
It's more like 90% racing the racetrack and 10% racing the competition. But there are times where it can be almost 50% racing the competition, like on restarts. So you have to just be respectful of the racetrack, respectful of the wall. Any kind of slip up, It's not like at Richmond where you get in a little hot and you can slide up to the second lane. It doesn't happen like that here. You slide up to the second lane and your right side's 6 inches into the wall. So, yeah, it's just demanding, and you have to race the racetrack the entire time. You get to a place like Michigan, it's so wide open that you don't even, it's like racing the racetrack's only 10% of it. Racing the competition's 60% of it, and managing your tires is, another 30% of it. So there's things that, change around different racetracks, but here it's 90% racing the racetrack.
All right, we'll go with Claire, and then we'll go with Andy. Go ahead, Claire.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius NASCAR Radio. I spoke with John Darby in the garage at Richmond after your group was huddled in the garage there. None of them really wanted to say anything. And John said that you had met with them for a half hour and that you made some points, some valid points, actually. Do you feel like NASCAR understood what you had to say in that meeting? And I asked if they were going to pull the two of you together, and John said, let's see what happens when we get to Darlington. So do you feel like they made any progress, that they explained anything back to you, that they heard what you had to say?
I would say it was progress. I think there was some explanations done on both sides that, opened each other's eyes. And ultimately, I don't know if there's an answer, but, it was a tough situation that night because of the way everything unfolded. I thought it was the best thing from my standpoint because of the things that I was told to go into the hauler and have a discussion first before I address the situation in any way possible. And, some people out there think that that's crying and being a little whiner, but they're not racing anymore. So ultimately, I don't know how it's all going to play out. I don't want to do anything to his team or to my team in a bad way. Like I said, it was a personal thing, and it'll get handled personally.
Okay, let's go to Andy, and then Jim.
Andy Shane from the State Newspaper. Ryan, with the change in the point systems and the change in the chase, how important is it going to be for you to collect a couple of wins, considering now that you're kind of sitting on the edge of the top 10, now that you're a third of the way through the regular season?
Well, with the points, if the winners percentage works out the way it did last year, 1 win will make you a chase contender. 2 wins will guarantee you a spot. And if you win 2 races, as a couple guys have done now, the rest of the summer is, potentially just a matter of either collecting more wins or, trying different things because you're into the chase. I mean, based on the history. So, there's different theories and there's different ways of looking at it. We don't typically look at it that way, but that's a new structure that could be viewed that way. And, we're doing our best to win each and every week, just to win once. So we'll address that if we get that fortunate.
Go ahead, Jim.
Jim Hunter, Charlotte Observer. Brian, you and Tony both started the season pretty hot, and he's in recent weeks expressed some displeasure about having difficulty, at least with his car, in getting the turn correctly. You appear, at least on the outside, to have you guys to be a little bit better positioned. How would you evaluate where the two teams are? Do you guys have a similar situation as Tony does, or do you address it a little differently?
We have a similar situation because we're dealing with similar parameters, but I think I do know that our cars haven't been set up exactly the same, and I think that his problems are a little bit worse than ours with respect to some of the complaints he has with his race car. Tony Gibson and I have worked really hard in this off season and the start of the season to communicate better, and we're not where we want to be, points-wise, finishing-wise. Tony started out great. He should have won 2 of the first 3 races. So, we feel like we have a really good package at certain racetracks, and certain racetracks we go back to that we had a good package at, we struggle with. Sometimes the tire changes. Sometimes we take a different race car and we just don't get it right. So, I think overall we're close. I mean, you look at the way our start is to the season right now, having both cars in the top 10, it's the strongest start for Stewart Haas. But in saying that, we're not 1-2.
2 more questions. Justin, and then end with Dwight.
Dustin Long, Landmark Newspapers. Ryan, a couple things. Jeff Gordon said a few drivers had texted him after his comments after the Richmond incident and thanked him for bringing up the issue of the safer barrier. One to ask if you had been one of those that had texted him in appreciation of what he said after what he'd gone through. And 2, you talked about just kind of moving forward and learning from this. what more do you want to see or can be seen out of the dialogue between the drivers and maybe NASCAR or the safety officials to have a better understanding? I think in some cases there may be some hard hits out there that don't register as high G-force, that may not register for officials that something needs to be done, whereas you're in the car getting hit. Do you guys, is there enough going back and forth to understand how this process works or what more can be done so you guys are better informed and other officials who are making these recommendations are better informed on the situation?
No, I did not text him. I don't even have his phone number. Second part of that was, I think that it's been more responsive than it has, the last 4 or 5 years as far as our communication with NASCAR from a driver standpoint, talking about the cars, talking about the hits, and saying that there was some change in personnel with the loss of Steve Peterson and working through some of those things that have made a difference in the way we communicate. But ultimately, I think that they've done a good job. They can always do a better job. Just in the instance of Richmond with the safer barriers and communicating, and there's been some steps from what I understand. I haven't seen it firsthand, but at Pocono, places like that where we've opened up communications from the driver's standpoint, and that makes a big difference. So the message can be delivered, but the message can be delivered in the wrong way too. So it's all a matter of timing. And usually when we get the microphone in front of our face and voice our opinion, it's not the best of timing. So it's hard for them to listen to everything we say. I understand that. But that's often your opportunity to say something. It's mostly off. Yeah. Otherwise, if we go up in the trailer, then we're considered whiners or complainers. So it's tough. I mean, there's times in the week when we're doing other things that we should be talking about. Calling Mr. Darby or Mr. Helton or Mr. Pemberton and talking about the things that we could do to be better. But just it's no different than anything else you do. Sometimes you forget the eggs when you go to the grocery store.
Go ahead. Last question.
Dwight Drum, RaceTape.com. Ryan, you mentioned that the track is 90% the track also collects a lot of right sides and collects some fenders. Do you consider Darlington track an ally?
I just I consider it an ally. I just enjoy racing here. I always have from the very first lap. I came here with Buddy Baker. The opportunity to drive here in the Nationwide Series was a lot of fun, and on the racetrack and off. I like the area, I like the people, I like the places, I like the history of NASCAR, and the racetrack just makes it that much more icing on top of the cake, and I like icing.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.